My name's Bo, and I'm an addict. And I read in a magazine somewhere that never pass up a chance to go to the bathroom. So I ran over here after dinner, so I thought that would be a good move. I think with recovery, you know, you start learning things about your body and life and all the stuff you were too busy to do before. This is kind of an unusual event for me. I've never done like a back-to-back, and I'm going to be speaking in Miami tomorrow, which is kind of weird, but my sponsor will be there, so that's cool. And I love the people from the Maryland area. When I lived in Aliquippa, I would go over to central Michigan, and about the same distance, I would come over to D.C. and Walkersville and Frederick and visit people and have dinner. And I have a really good 3 or 4 years of my life that I was single parenting 2 boys over in Aliquippa, and they were both, you know, like in grammar school. And anybody that's parented children knows it's hard, you know, getting certain ideas across to your children. And I told a friend, Bill P., about my dilemma, and he located somebody that was willing to host us. So I woke up on a Friday morning. I lived on Franklin Avenue in Aliquippa, which is an extremely rough town, an old mill town. And the front and back windows of my car had been broken out by a vandal. And so I drove the kids to school, and I said, close your eyes so you won't get broken glass in your eyes. And, of course, I had to leave my eyes open. But so after I dropped them off at school, I went home, made arrangements to buy another car and sell that car and get the tag and insurance changed over, and still left that afternoon for Frederick. And I was hosted by Jennifer, who had a different name back then, but now it's F. And she took us down to the Smithsonian Institution. And we went there, and they did a what they call a Smithsonian trek every year for like 4 or 5 years. And I told my kids, I said, this is so you'll know what school is for. It's not to get good grades or please your professor. It's to learn how to participate in the world that's out there. And I really think that made a big difference in their lives. But see, that's just one more tiny glimpse of how much Narcotics Anonymous has given me. And it is a family disease, and it is a family program. And, you know, the best saying I've overheard so far coming out of Africa is it takes a whole village to raise a child. And I think that's a really cool saying for us, because without NA, we don't have our village. But if you're an addict like we're an addict and you find Narcotics Anonymous, you've got instantly brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents, nieces and nephews, and sons and daughters all over the place. And there's something about it. When left to my own devices, I can really screw things up pretty damn easy. I mean, you know, I'm 34 years clean, and I'm still good at it. But when I'm around you, I don't tend to do it. Because somehow I'm so worried about keeping your ass out of trouble, I don't have time to get in my own damn trouble. I don't know if that's how it really works or not, but that might be a new chapter. Anyway, so that makes me, I'm letting you know how grateful I am to the fellowship over here in Maryland. I got to attend a wedding one year, and just a bunch of stuff. And Chris K. down in Walnut off of Connecticut. So anyway, when Larry North died, I was at his wake. He was an old friend of mine. And he and another guy were practically the founders of NA in Virginia, in West Virginia. But anyway, another thing you do, and I was taught early on to do this, is you pray for God to put His will in your heart and His words on your lips. And somebody asked me over dinner tonight if I got nervous when I share, and I said, no, it's kind of like a meditation. Because when I'm up here, I can still look at individual faces, but basically the words coming out of my mouth, that's in the hands of my higher power, because you better know I turned all this shit over a long time ago. And sometimes I sort of like the ties that bind us together. It came to me just last week that there's accord and discord, and those are like the ties that bind us together. And that obsession is losing control of my thinking, and compulsion is losing control of my actions. So if you're really clean, you're really working your program, you'll have these things come to you every day. So keep a recovery journal. Anything good you think of, then God will whisper it to you. But if you write it down, God will give you the next installment. And if you blow it off like it's nothing, God will say, "Oh, he's too busy." You don't want that. And and you're always learning. You're always, like I'd say about 3 weeks ago, and I'm being real literal. I mean, my friends will tell you I'm a pretty literal guy. And I remember thinking that's why the newcomer's the most important person in the rooms. And, of course, the newcomer thinks, "Ha! 'Cause I'm so cool." That ain't it. What it is when I get away from you, the newcomer, I forget how strong and miraculous not only the 12 steps and traditions, but also just all the general principles of Narcotics Anonymous are. And when you get close to somebody that says, "Oh, I'm here because my mother wanted me to come," or, "I'm court ordered, I don't think I have a problem though," you get to see how fast, how strong those spiritual principles are. Don't use, keep coming back. If you can, pray for help. And within a week or two, they're like blinking and looking around, like, "Where the hell am I? Who are all these people?" But we what is heroin, LSD, pot, good sex, a good day's work, and a hug all have in common? And it's endorphins. And so we dose our newcomers with endorphins. That's what we do when we hug. So you get the steady supply. Just keep coming back. And you just feel great. I mean, in Marietta, back when the book was being written, we'd pick you up off the damn ground with a hug and shake you. We set you down. I mean, it was an experience. And a lot of people are still clean from those days. But so I guess to tell my story, and I was born and raised in Georgia. Some people think I have an accent. What I know. And I grew up pretty much, the first 5 years I was down on Ponce de Leon behind my grandfather's mansion, and he died before I was born. But we stayed down there 5 years, and I still have like the real vivid mental pictures. I can remember pictures from my young childhood from back then, like I can remember yesterday afternoon. So, or this morning. And then we moved out to Red Oak, Georgia, near the old hat factory, because he had a business called Soul Hats. And so from the time I was 5 till I was 12, I got to run and play in the woods. And I would climb up, I think, like 75 and 80 feet. I mean, like really enough to kill you, way enough to kill you. And it would cut me, but I didn't let that stop me. I mean, just from like grabbing the tree and climbing up, it's hard. And I think I was basically unaware of some of the problems that could have come from climbing trees like that. But they say recovery improves your depth perception. But I think a lot of my adulthood has been like that. That I was always climbing the trees of life, trying to figure out what in the hell's going on. Because from time to time in our world, there's a lot of things that make you wonder. And but I had a good time, and all that time with the country kids, especially out in Red Oak, when I was real little, all the teenagers were just like big brothers and sisters. Any teenager, if you had an accident, if you needed food, if you needed somebody to take up for you, to help you find your way home, they were there for you 100%. Just didn't miss a beat. That was just the way it was. I was introduced to sex by little country kids, my peers. And another time I'll tell you that story. But I had very good impressions, let me tell you. And I remember one time that it was coming fall, and we were smoking rabbit tobacco, which is horrible. Just the worst. I mean, if you know what chicory is compared to real coffee, well, that's what rabbit tobacco is compared to real tobacco. I mean, it's just give you a headache. It's horrible. But it was coming winter, and I thought, like, in a couple of weeks, all this stuff's going to be on the ground because it's going to get cold and frost is going to. So I organized the neighborhood, and we harvested like big bags of it and put it in like, those little mayonnaise jars and ball jars and all that. And of course, it all turned green in about a week, because we didn't know what we were doing. But look at the mentality of that. I mean, that's where I come from. And I remember another interesting story from my great using days was going around New Year's morning and drinking the rest of the beer and beer cans and bottles and drinking the rest of the other drinks. And occasionally a beer can would have a cigarette butt floating in it, which is, just really not much of an obstacle if you were serious. And you just kind of flip it aside with your tongue and kind of tilt it a little bit. It's really nothing. And it didn't stop me. And later I made my own home brew, That's another story. When I was in my mid-teens, so there was this psychology back then. When you got grown and got married, you're permitted to leave home and be free. So that image was like deeply gouged into my gray matter at an early age. So I've been married and divorced 7 times. So if anybody out there hasn't been married yet, you can have 2 or 3 of mine. But I'm grateful. Another thing I'm grateful for, like within the last year, I've been contacted by 2 ex-wives and had good talks with both of them without, going into rut or getting distracted. Just curious how things going with you. How did so-and-so turn out? And that's a nice feeling, because I'm like 63, and I stopped getting married back, a long time ago. Something like 17 or 18 years ago, like half of my clean time. And I, not then, but within a few years, I realized that what all that sex was about and all the marriages was I wanted kids, and I already had 2. And I would probably at that tender age, do better to try to be a better dad to them than to worry about making any more. And so that's kind of colored my lifestyle somewhat. But I remember, just having all these questions, and my grandfather was supposed to have committed suicide, blah, blah, blah. And I grew up wondering what could be more important than money, because, he was a multimillionaire on the gold standard, so that made me very curious. And I remember years later listening to the battle figures in Vietnam, and they would say, this high school team beat that high school team by such and such points, and then maybe a couple other announcements. And then they would say 50 Americans killed in South Vietnam and 500 South Vietnamese soldiers and 5,000 North Vietnamese soldiers. And then the next night they would say 75 Americans killed and then 750 South Vietnamese and 7,500 North Vietnamese. And I had this really bad feeling that the numbers were just being made up. And I think my life changed, that moment. Because up until then, I think I had this illusion that the national government would never kill its own children for the sake of the economy. And, addicts are given a really bad rap. I mean, active addiction addicts and all of that. But a lot of active addiction addicts are writers and poets and singers and artists of various types. And we are possibly the world's conscience because we're awake, we're adult. Usually addicts have got survival skills that help them not die, and they live, they're awake and they have no allegiance to the society because they sort of like view it from the outside. And if there are flaws, they see those. Of course, we hide behind the flaws and we condemn society and justifies our crap, right? Because they're so screwed up. But anyway, there is a lot out there. And then clean, I don't think that goes away. I think that we remain society's conscience, and we occupy a special position in each one of our families, even if we're cut off from our blood family. And we're not afraid to take on other challenges, other goals, not just money, property, and prestige. Of course, a lot of us get hung up on that crap. I mean, that's highly addictive stuff, too. And you take away the drugs from a drug-crazed maniac, and you just have a more efficient maniac. Really. And some people come into NA and get clean and stay clean and keep coming back and go to meetings and work 2 or 3 steps, and then they start working on how not to work the program, but be socially acceptable and have that aura of personal power. And that's really sad, and it's not okay just to say, oh, well, they relapse later on. That's like a punishment, like it's good and bad. And so if you're bad, we have a special negative sanction, instead of demoting you or firing you or moving you to Siberia, you can just get loaded. That's not okay. It's a disease. It really is. It's not a moral thing. And when our people relapse, they don't want to. They've just painted themselves into a corner. And so if you're alive and clean and spiritually guided and you pray a lot and people think you're kind of goofy, you be a bridge builder and a peacemaker. And you listen to those people before they go out. And figure out little damn things to say to them that'll stick in their mind, where when they're out there having that great time, they're out of money, out of drugs, and nobody wants to go to bed somehow. They go like, well, I remember this one friend of mine used to sponsor him. His name's Steve S. lives in North Georgia. But he was on death row in Georgia, and he had a special job which was cutting hair. So he was a barber, right? He learned to cut hair in prison because in active addiction he was always going to prison. In fact, in recovery, they kept finding new warrants, and every 6 months or a year or two, they'd arrest him for another round of. But he had warrants in every county in North Georgia, and a dozen counties, man. It took several years for that to wear off. And it was kind of a crisis when he ran out of warrants, But so he's cutting hair on death row, and he's cutting along one day. And see, those death row guys, the warden hates them and doesn't let them talk to anybody, and just hates them. That's all. So Steve's cutting his hair. And the guy said, he's the guy that did the all-day murders. And he started noticing, because he's one of the people when the 4th edition debacle, he was like one of the founders of NA in North Georgia. And when the 4th edition debacle went down, he's one of the people that left Narcotics Anonymous, got loaded, and, after several years, wound up back in prison. And he started missing the NA because he was cutting the hair of all these death row guys. And most of them were loaded when they did the crime that got on death row. You get my drift? And he started missing the NA, and he said, well, some of that stuff that I didn't like, that was basically out in California. That wasn't even here. That wasn't the NA. That wasn't my buddies. That was all these other folks. He was able to separate them in his mind. And he was cutting hair one day, and the mass murderer sitting there under on the scissors. He says, "You don't really want to be in here, do you?" And Steve says, "Well, no." Clip, 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 clip. And the guy says, "Oh, okay." So the next day they came and knocked on his door, you know. "Hey," I can't say his last name. "Hey, Steve, come out here. You've been transferred out, blah, blah, blah." They transferred him out of the system, put him back on the damn street. And see, what happened was that old mass murderer told the warden, he says, "You know, we really like the way Steve cuts our hair. We want him to be our barber the rest of the time we're in here." And so the warden threw him out. So I guess God wanted him back in NA, and that's how it worked. He's got a lot of clean time now, and he was in Hawaii for the World Convention, and got a beautiful wife, and they've raised a couple of her daughters, and Steve's got several kids of his own, so he's quite a fellow. And he's still cutting hair, but he's on the outside now, and happy. I like embellishing some of this stuff. Let me go into the steps for a minute. When I got clean in 1974, there was not a single NA meeting in Georgia. There wasn't a single NA meeting that I know of in any of the southern states. All the NA was either in California, meaning Southern California, LA, or Northern California, San Francisco. And out there, if they say up north, they don't mean the northeastern corridor, they mean Northern California. And down south out there doesn't mean Georgia and Alabama, it means San Diego or LA. But the other rest of it was in Wilkes-Barre and Scranton and a couple of eastern Pennsylvania towns. And in 1970, if you ever embark on a study of your history in Narcotics Anonymous, there were 20 meetings in the world in 1970. That should give you some idea. And there was like this great illusion that addicts in recovery can't write. And I remember repeating that phrase for a couple of years until I said, wait a minute, what do you mean? Samuel Taylor Coleridge was an addict and he wrote. And all these other guys, what are you talking? Oh, they can write when they're using, but they get clean and they suddenly lose the gift. And so anyway, we sort of challenged that one. But anyway, because of that, I would go to meetings of the Liquid Fellowship and I would say, "My name's Bo and I'm an acid head," or "My name's Bo and I'm a speed freak." And they would kind of go like that. And but they knew I was sincere for various reasons, and so I was accepted and treated well, I think. And I read all their literature and did all I could to ask good questions and study. I think I went to 110 meetings my first 90 days. After 30 days, they started one little meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. I had started one a couple of years before in '71, but it didn't last. And we didn't have enough to go, and we didn't have any real NA blood around Atlanta. And so after 30 days, I went to that one little Friday night meeting, and then I wound up going back every Friday night for 5 years. And I remember being afraid that I would get the benefits of recovery and the benefits of the program without paying a price. And the price is obviously working all 12 steps. And that made me real nervous because I'd been involved in some nonprofit work on the Strip in Atlanta, and I didn't want to be like a big deal in NA and not know my stuff and not feel like I'd paid the price. And I knew I could feel my heart like going out to the program because I had really been looking for something like NA for a while before I got here. And you hear a lot of people talk about they relapsed after they've been clean. I did all my relapsing before I got here, if you don't know how that movie goes. And I had no problem quitting drinking. I had no problem. I would quit shooting drugs years before, and I just I'd worn them out. It just the thrill was very gone, long gone. And so I went into step one a little bit like a tiger after a piece of meat. And I remember I would say, I try to say the first step out loud, and I would get gummed up on some of the words, It just wouldn't come out. My name's Bo, and So I practice surrendering, like mentally surrendering to the idea of the disease of addiction and my life being unmanageable, and I'm powerless over a tractor trailer truck or a raging bull elephant or a rattlesnake bite, and certain things I am powerless over, basically. And as I enlarge that picture, then my basis for recovery grew, because like any other addict, once I get started, I can go, I can expand forever. Infinite's not too big a word for me. And so the more surrendered I was, then when you surrender greatly, then your potential for curiosity increases greatly. And so even though I heard past the step 2, 3, and wrote a list in 4, I noticed I wasn't really feeling anything. So I did the recommended thing at the time, went back to step 2, and I wound up taking a course in white magic and going to a Hindu guru called Muktananda at the same damn time, the same time frame. And I remember praying for God to put me in touch with people that believed like I believed, so I could find out how they prayed. So that conglomeration, those two, I didn't know that I had a fear of witchcraft up until that point. So I lost that fear. I found out the witches that were burned at the stake in Europe were mainly women who had all day to sit around and tend the fires, and they birthed the children, and they nursed the sick, and they laid out the dead, they knew when to plant the crops, and stuff like that. Basically all the things that people go to professionals for today. And the guys would go out there and fight the grizzly bears and all that stuff and get their asses kicked. So when the Romans came in, the women were the coherent opposition. And, of course, they neatly arranged it to where the church got their property when they were burned. So something like 250,000 people died that way. If you need to legitimize what I'm saying is not an outside issue, think about Sheriff Anguisto, who did the official welcome at the 7th World Convention in San Francisco. He said, "You are today's witches, and you're burnt at the stake every day and don't even know it. My jails are full of you people." And Muktananda said, "God in you, as you." And he said, "Americans don't fall in love, they do business." And he was quite thoughtful, I thought. And I was embarrassed to go to Lady Morgan to say I was going to Muktananda. But when I did, she said, "Oh, he's very remarkable. He's well thought of in his own country." So apparently a lot of gurus operating in the States are not too well thought of back home. But occasionally there's a real one. And so when I got done with my second step, I had really come to believe, let me tell you what. I took a course, I read books, I wrote essays. I could talk for 4 or 5 hours and never leave the subject we're on or repeat myself. So I'm not going to do that. But if you ever think about working your second step or going deeper with your second step, because the steps are like rooms, and you can only enter once for the first time, but you could re-enter then forever afterwards. So it always works to your advantage. And just deepen it. Go to a bookstore. Find out what it is about the love of God that you just never took time for. Because that's going to power the rest of your recovery. The first step, we're powerless over our addiction, life's unmanageable. What do we need? Power. Where do you get power? Higher power. And that's the next step, ain't it? That might just be the second most important step. And if you're lucky and really do a good job with your second step, then when it comes time to turn your life and your will over, you say like, "Yeah, man." Because you ain't worried about what's going to happen. You come to believe. So that puts everything on a different level. And when it's on that level, and you look around at some of your shitty living habits, you think, why am I doing that? Why am I always late with the rent? You just start saving up ahead of time, and you ain't late no more. Next. And you get an attitude. You go looking, why do I keep running women off? Damn, I like women. Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, there's that. Yeah. Oh, I guess that's what they mean by clean up your act, huh? Yeah. And 1,000 things. Why did I have 275 jobs last year? Show up, do an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, If you're not happy with your job, you put out applications before you quit or walk off the job. Little living skills, that are like non-self-destructive. And all of a sudden those defects of character are really kind of like you've been lost in the damn swamp and you're mainly worried about the alligators and cottonmouths, But once you're out of the swamp, you won't get some of that slimy shit off, Like, where can I take a bath? Got some clean clothes around here? Because that's what it's like. Because you don't need that same old crap when you're out of the swamp. And Mr. Alligator is way back there. I mean, you may have some things ahead of you, but the alligators, you left them behind when you quit using. So, I remember when I first got clean and I would hear people talk about working a 4-step and like they went in the other room and threw up. I thought, damn, that's weird. I thought the 4-step would be kind of a relief, putting it down and writing and, because when you write it down, when it's inside, it's got you by the short and curlies. Does anybody know what the short and curlies means? Oop, ask your sponsor. But when you put it down on paper, it's outside of you. It's lost power over you. Okay? And that's a step towards what? Your freedom. Which is a step towards what? Your happiness and joy. Maybe even your bliss. So the more of that stuff, that old swamp water and stuff, weeds and vines and mud and stuff, you get off you, the better. A lot of those living habits, they're not functional in your life. A lot of that stuff was tailor-made for, the latter stages of active addiction. And without the active addiction, you just don't really need to be doing that crap. So I think a real 4-step is relief. And I'm not putting anybody down that wants to go in the other room and throw up. I mean, if that's your bag. But, and sharing it gets you a little further out of you, right? And that doesn't have that power over you. I'm going to die with this secret of what I did when I was 6 years old, or 16, or 26. I mean, hell, if it's in the past, process it and get on with your life. If it's a mistake, learn from it. If it's a success, spread the good news. And so it's all about freedom. And the original 12 steps were 7 steps. I take it everybody in the room knows that, right? And then later they divided some of them. And I shared a lesson a month ago up in Quebec. And one of the things that came to me lately is just step 1 and step 12. And in between, they're like paired. We come to believe, turn our life into a will over. We made a list, and we shared it with somebody. We became willing and asked God to remove. We made a list, and we made amends. We continued to do our inventory, and we prayed and meditated. So they're like pairs, kind of interesting maybe. And so I've heard the 7th step described as a drug addict's dream come true, because if you're addict enough to qualify for Narcotics Anonymous and go through all the damn trouble we go through getting clean and staying clean and learn our lingo and reading our literature and, all the stuff we do, you want a new life. You want a new you. You want a new you. You want a happy version. Can I have a happy version of me, please? I mean, that's the name of the game here. And when you get it, if you get it, if you don't get sidetracked and apathetic and jealous, or let your ego start creeping back in and putting out little tentacles that hold you down and make you fearful, then you'll make a transfer from a fear-based life to a faith-based life. And when you do, then you get to be part of the miracles. Because that's what we really trade in. That's what makes our program attractive. That's why NA is not a business. That's why NA is not a corporation. That's why we don't have bosses. That's why we don't have membership cards. That's why we don't have people that study you and grade you. You got to appear before an NA examination board before you can be a speaker. And it's kind of funny that we used to be asked for speaker tapes all the time, but really nobody's expected to tell their story the way it was on their tape. You know, look a little closer, people. It's your program. If it's going to be better tomorrow, then that means you're going to say, "Oh God, what can I do today to help those to come?" When you have that attitude, your chances of staying clean double or triple. When you get, NA's very healthy. When we're worried about one more meet and one more newcomer, and let's get a helpline going, NA's very strong. When you start worrying about, they're having a dance on Friday night, and so are we, so it looks like those bastards wouldn't copy us. Pretty soon, the infighting starts again. You know what I'm saying? That's when we get sick again, in recovery. And you know what? If we don't learn to deal with that simple reality, that thing will grab us by the damn throat. Am I right? And that's an inside issue. That's something we got every right in the world to worry about and become informed about. Because a happy life is the fine art of loving and getting along with people. Include yourself, the human side of you. Wait a minute. When's the last time I took me to the movies? When's the last time I took me to the park? Or something you like doing. So... and not selfish stuff, it's stuff that's sort of, I remember my high school principal talked about low adventure being like sex, and one time the Russian KBG was chasing him through Berlin, and that's all low adventure stuff because it's common, anybody can do that. And then high adventure is like climbing, a mountain, or enjoying a great piece of art, or I guess if you're Muslim, like going to wherever. And the things that lift my souls are things that used to be goals in my life that I never got to do them. And because I didn't get to do them, a part of me died with those dreams. And then in recovery, those dreams come back. And even new cool dreams. And with surrender, with a higher power, and without the damn defects to hold you back, you get to go forward into those dreams. Pretty cool, huh? But you're going to run into all those damn people you don't want to see. And you can't go down that street because you might run into Ralphie. And you can't go to that restaurant because Susie might be there. And on and on and on. So that's what steps 8 and 9 are for. To free you, you freed inside your being, and you freed in your immediate social life. And then steps 8 and 9 free you to go down any road in life and not be afraid of who you're going to run into. And if you happen to see somebody you hadn't been able to exactly reach before, you can run up to them and say, "Hey, Martha, I'm the one that stole the lunch money." Because probably, if Martha even remembers, so I've been wondering about that, It happened back in grade school, right? But if it bugs you, it's got a place on your inventory list. Because who's recovery about? Recovery's about you. If you're going to be happy, you have to make a list of the things you're not happy with. That if you could go back and redo that and have it come out differently, you would want to very much. And one other oddity, and I'll mention because I'm not that odd, but I'm fairly odd. Think of it more as weird. I remember I love this movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? And further down the rabbit hole, if anybody knows about those. If you don't, find out about them. Quantum mechanics and all that. But Oh, I just skipped a thought. I can't jump around like that. What I learned from those two, and this is not an aside. This is very much in line with my spiritual growth the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years since it came out, is that when you vividly imagine something with your mind and clean and clear, you're able to do this. You create a place in reality for that to come, the potential for that dream or that vision to come true. And it's called creative imagination. And if you are insane and you lack a higher power and all your character defects have still got you, don't even mess with this. But if you've been around a while and you get bored with recovery and want to try something new, try envisioning talking to your boss about a raise and he's saying, well, actually, I've been planning to give you a raise next month, but I'm going to give you one right now since you asked. And then it happens, you'll go like, oh, this is just too weird. No, it's not too weird. That's real life. And you get to do stuff like that. And again, I could go on for about 4 or 5 hours, ask my friends, and not even repeat myself or introduce a new subject. But I was broke down in my van, and I had a full load, moving to Michigan for 4 months, and then Ontario for 2 months. So I had a bunch of stuff with me. So I had to unload the van to get the tire out and all of that. And I made it to Spartanburg, South Carolina, and then I realized there were those big K-signs on either side, so there was like 2 lanes, northbound and southbound, and on 85. And with the K-signs there, if I had had a flat tire, I would not have been able to pull off the road for 2 or 3 miles. And it kind of dawned on me, depth perception, it kind of dawned on me what the pickle I was in. Because, I could deal with having another flat tire without a spare, but not with those K-signs there. That changed the picture. And so I made it past those damn things, and as soon as I did, had another flat tire. So there I am at 3 in the morning, side of the road, on the way to Michigan, with my second flat, and no spare, and the full load still. So I thought, but this would be a good time to try out some of that creative visualization stuff, I think. And what's the nicest thing that could happen from this point forward? Let's see. First of all, I need a new donut. And then, I need a new spare tire. I mean, another, 4th tire for the van, going to Michigan. I said, I kind of like an omelet. I like omelets. And I'd already called my friends, in the Carolinas, and they were like sleeping and stuff, the little voicemail. And the state patrol was sending the vehicle out, but they weren't there yet. And all that, of course, before I surrendered and did the creative visualization prayer. And so I got done. I've really envisioned myself driving down the road, and I've got the tire straight, and I've got the omelet, and I'm on my way, and everything's just cool as a breeze. And the phone rang. Hey, this is so-and-so. Yeah, Neil just called me. Is this Bo? Yeah. Well, look, I'll be out to pick you up. You out by so-and-so, right? I said, yeah. So he came out. I had both my tires, I was ready waiting for him. So he took me to Bo's Fish House and bought me an omelet. Then these other 2 guys showed up, and the guy that picked me up went on to work because he ran a parts department for a dealership. So this other guy said, "Oh, you coming with me now?" Well, he owned a junkyard, so he got out of his car, and he says, "Hey, get this guy another donut. Need to change his tire out." He said, "Bo, would it be okay if we just gave you the other tire and rim?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be fine." So about 45 minutes later, I was driving down the 85 North with a new tire and a donut. I hope that was worth the time I've devoted to it on the tape, and I hope I've had your kind attention, because, I envisioned it and it damn happened. And I thought, I'm going to tell people about that. So this is one, or 2 or 3. But so let's see, what else is there? So after the 3 years and having at least an acquaintance with the steps and a really long look at this tiny little NA community in Atlanta, and there was 4 or 5 like core members, you know, maybe 10, maybe a little more, but there was just maybe 100 newcomers. And they were all asking us about the meetings in California and who's working on the book and how many meetings are there in the world, and just all these real basic questions that we had no answers for. And understand, but now we were writing letters and getting postcards from L.A. So the postcards I didn't really think were too hot, but I think sometimes it was a letter. And but basically we weren't getting any answers. And I didn't know it, but I think at the time they didn't want to tell us, you know, how little NA was, because they figured it'd be kind of a letdown. And nobody was working on the book, of course. And so 3 years clean in '77, me and a guy named Tommy B jumped on a plane at Delta Airlines and flew out there to the 7th World Convention in San Francisco. That's where Sheriff Fungisto did that cooler welcome. And there were about 1,500 people there, but a lot of them really looked like they were hardened criminal types that were still in penitentiary. I mean, I remember just walking around thinking, damn, is that recovery or what? And what it really was the big recovery houses out there just trucked them in by the busload. So there's probably about 200 or 300 real NAs there. But Houston got the bid, so the World Convention went to Houston after that. I asked the question, who's working on the book? Because we wanted to find out the name of the person so we could get behind them, get their address and phone number. You know, we just wanted DNA to grow. I mean, the liquid fellowship was fine if you're into liquids, but, you know, at that stage, I really didn't even want to tell them what getting high was like, because they don't really need to know, do they? I'm not sure it'd be good for them to know. Because they keep talking about having one little moment and try to recapture that 190 seconds. And, you know, you can stay on high on chemicals for a week or two and wake up, feel fine the whole time. I mean, you know, no telling where you at, no telling what you did. You know, you got to ask certain basic questions when you come out of it. But, you know, that's the trouble with real addictions. You can just feel great and your baby just died. And then you can just feel great and your best friend got his head blown off. And you can just feel just great and they've got you in prison for murder. And you can't remember getting mad at anybody. So God bless the Liquid Fellowship. And it's up to us to make our house clean and do for our people what we can. Because if you don't, you curse yourself and you poison your future as well as theirs. And NA's healthy when we're out giving, when we're concerned about the other man or woman. And the recovery will go sour in a New York minute if you get self-indulgent, self-obsessed, egotistical, and all that crap. I mean, it'll come back in vivid colors. And the good thing that also happened at the World Convention in San Francisco is that when I asked who's working on our book, they said, oh, go down. I went down there and I talked to them, and they said, oh, go down the registration. So I went down there. I met Jimmy Cannon, Chuck Skinner, Sally E., Greg Pierce. All the last name people have died since, but Jack Whaley I met. Jack Whaley's wife, Lois, Greg Pierce's wife, Lois, and Bob B's wife, Alma, created Naranon. Did you know that? And so I met all these people in about 10 minutes, and this heavyset fellow came up, and Jimmy said, hey, Greg, this guy's all the way from Atlanta. He's asking about the book. Why don't you take a little time with him? So I figured they were just shining me on because, I'm streetwise, and I figured I was probably going to get shined on more than anything else. But this guy really took me off, heard me out, answered my questions, included the important response, which is I don't know. If somebody's shining you on, they'll give you straight answers to any question you can dream up. But if they're honest, occasionally they'll say, I don't know. Nobody knows. And so that impressed me. And then I had to go take care of something, and amazingly, he went with me. And then he had to take care of something. I went with him. And then he took me up to his room, and he had some writing that a guy named George S. had done. I don't know if George is still with us or not, so I won't give his last name. But he had written a little bit on the 12 steps. And that was all the literature input we had at the time. Well, Greg trained me to be lit chair for about 2 years. And in 79, I was elected world lit chair. And I'll tell you, for like 2 or 3 days, I saw the planet spread at my feet. I was the world lit chair. And then, anybody ever read R. Crumb comic books? Huh? You know who Flaky Font was? Well, okay, it was a little bit, made me feel a little bit like Flaky Font, because I realized what it was going to feel like to be world lit chair for a year and not do nothing. And that was not a pretty picture. And I got a 9-page letter from the one lit chair that preceded me, because the World Service Conference started really in the late 70s. And there was only one lit chair before me. And he wrote me a 9-page letter. And he basically said, do something, do anything. Nobody's ever done anything. So anything you do will be okay, even if it's a mistake. Just do something, please, for 9 pages. Even if it's wrong, do it. Don't worry about it. You know, we get over our mistakes pretty easy, but do something, damn it. So that encouraged me. But hell, I was pretty damn encouraged anyway, if you know what I mean. And at the conference, I let the RSRs decide where they wanted to hold the first lit conference. And back then, you know, it was a big deal between the East Coast and the West Coast. And so, happily, they chose Wichita, which is where the Learjets come from. So in between being a cow town and all that, they also make Learjets. So we had a long weekend, like a Thursday, Friday, Sunday conference there. And out of that, we generated a handbook for NA Lit committees, telling how to write stories to the basic text, how to raise money within traditions, how to start a local newsletter, how to form a lit committee. I mean, it was a pretty good little handbook for its time. Still pretty good. If you get into archival stuff, try to look it up. You can probably Google it, but if you can't today, you will be in one day soon, because we're now in the process of putting all the World Service Conference files up on the web, all the WSO files up on the web, minutes and correspondence, all the Board of Trustees files and minutes up on the web, so you people can access them and read them and study them. Because I am devoted to democratic principles. And if you are not informed, it makes the recovery part of Bo real damn nervous. And I'll do almost anything to get out of that feeling. And if you're not informed, how are you going to do any good? All you're going to do is just reinvent last year's mistakes. So we can do better than that. If anybody's had anybody down, you'll understand why I'm sort of passionate about this stuff. But anyway, NA is not a business. It's a loving, caring fellowship. I don't like the idea of NA as a corporation, because it's killing to the spirit. And if nobody's explained it to you with some gravity and seriousness and details, your home group is the top of the mountain for Narcotics Anonymous. Your dreams are the most important dreams in the world. If you are not educated and encouraged to find and actualize your dreams, your recovery is going to fade like a flower. And it won't bear fruit. There'll be no seed. Just another dead blossom that could have been. And anyway, I'm the one that made up a little bumper sticker called "Hooked on Miracles," and so after the first lit conference, which was in Wichita, the second again was set by the people at the conference in the Midwest, and it was in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was a week long. We had the Federal building, and addicts went down to the blood bank and gave blood to buy toner and paper. When's the last time anybody in your region gave blood for an NA purpose? Okay, those are the people that I served as their world lit chair. It was easy to surrender to people like that. It was honored to serve people like that. And Greg had the very good idea of enlarging, of taking the input that we had, and we had about 800 pages at the time, and cutting it up, and we photocopied it all, and we cut it up into little strips, and we separated those by a topic outline based on the white booklet. So you had the same, who is an addict, who, what, how, why, all that stuff, and we added 3 more chapters. Living the program just for the day, and more will be revealed, and all that. And so that's how the basic text was written, and it was cut and paste, and we would yell a lot, because if I ask you politely how you work your 4th step, you'll give me a polite, low-key answer. And if I get down and ask you to, really, what do you mean? You'll get shook up and tell me the damn truth, almost like I slapped you and you're going to slap me back with the truth. And then I say, thank you, man, that's cool. Write that down. And we just went on and on like that. And I remember the first original line for the basic text was, pain is our common denominator. And that got changed, of course, but I still think that's kind of an interesting first line. And I remember there was a guy at Lincoln that was yelling and interrupting. He was obviously loaded. And the work group put up with him for, I guess there's about 30 people that showed up for that one. But they were from 5, 6, or 7 different states, not just from one little area. And as chair, I kind of like to sit back and let the group run itself where possible. And one young lady to my right, she said, whatever his name was, we're writing this book for you, but we're not going to let you stop us from writing this book, so you have to go outside now. And that's how the Lit Committee dealt with stuff like that. And like I say, it was not hard to surrender to people like this. I believe that all the miracles that Narcotics Anonymous has in its common welfare came from people like that, in settings like that, where business matters and conflicts and egotistical concerns were set to the side, and we were all pulling together for the common good. Has anybody ever seen one of those flood pictures where there's like a log floating down the river, and there's a raccoon on one end and a bobcat on the other, and they're like natural enemies? But seeing as how they're both in the same pickle, they decide not to attack each other while they're on the log, That might be different next week, but right now we got to get along. And I see, I believe in wave motion and life forms and all that. So, yeah, we took the wave and we put it on the ceiling until the basic text got done. We let go absolutely, no byline. Does anybody know what a byline is? When you write a book, you put your name on it, like by William Smith. That's a byline. So no personal credit. There were about 1,200 people. I was one of them, but there were about 1,200 people. So people always say, Bo helped write the basic text. And I don't say a damn thing. I just surrender, let go, and let God. But every time I get a chance, I honor the 1,200. Because it wasn't an accident. I mean, we set it up that way. We figured the more people that wrote it, the better. And the people that wrote it would approve it. And plus, they were the ones going to have to live with it, so that's fair. And we really did believe in democratic principles. I mean, you know, to the hilt. Really did. Still do. And no royalty. Do you know what that means? Okay, so how many? What year is it going to come that the corporation has brought in $100 million? The millionth copy sold in 1990. It was approved and first seen in '83, and it sold for $8 back then. So that's like 8 million, 16, 24. You see what I'm getting at? So the same people that gave blood to write your basic text also were not interested in taking money for God's miracle. That's the kind of standards you need in a healthy spiritual fellowship. If it's going to be a business, you better start writing some checks. But remember, you can't buy what we give. Not everybody, but some of you are capable of being like NA students and really getting these minutes and studying and become very, very, very informed on this stuff. And the ones of you that are not inclined to do that, please don't laugh at the ones that do. And don't treat them funny or like they're trying to be better than or anything. Because we're all in this together. And while they're doing that, you're laying out the literature. Or while they're doing that, you're on the phone talking to a newcomer. Everybody's got a job here. But we need our wisdom. We need our learning. We need our knowledge. We have not gone away. And if we're going to stand the test of time, who is that up to? You think there's a degree of boys and girls in New York City that run this outfit? Or do you think that there's some walk-on-water addicts in Los Angeles, California, that they're leading this outfit? You are leading this outfit. I am here to tell you that. You know, I am Bo S. I really am. I'm cool with that. I'm glad. I like that. That helps me inside, feel good about myself and accept good things in my life. And I want the same for you. And you're not going to get it if you don't get you a good dream for the fellowship and have it come through. The people who put on this convention, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you to the committee. I wish I could have stayed for tomorrow and Sunday. I would certainly have done so if I wasn't called elsewhere. But it's still the fellowship. It's all one fellowship. Ocean City or Miami, Florida. It's the same coast anyway. But you got to have a dream. Like Jimmy Kennedy said one time, a fellowship without a dream is a farce. And I always like that line from the movie Hawaii. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? And, you know, that's the land beyond the 12th step, people. It's not ego's trip to work the 12 steps. It's okay to really work the 12 steps. And when you've done step 8 or 9 or 10 or 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever it is, do the next one. You know, that's the key to the future. And after you've done the 12th step and you've had a spiritual awakening, you know what the spiritual awakening is like? For some reason, you know how we remember things? Like I told you, I'm into like graphical memory and all. There was a Walt Disney movie about this German Shepherd pup that was out on a farm, and there was a big goose on the farm that would just run over and squawk, you know, and flap its big old wings. And compared to that little old fat puppy, that swan was as big as a mountain. And it would just run off, you know, all summer long. The little puppy, the damn goose would see that puppy, and he'd come flapping his wings. That little puppy would just run off, you know, and hide and try to get away from him. Well, you know, they grow pretty damn fast. And they had plenty of dog food on that farm. And I think that fall or so, it must have been like when it was 9 or 10 months old, the goose comes out one more day, and he's like, honk, honk, honk. And the puppy goes, he's cornered now, and he can't run. He's got nowhere to hide. And he goes, Rrr. See, that's like a spiritual awakening. And this lady told me one time, the other fellowship, about working the 4 steps. She says, "Oh, you don't know how to do it. You won't need instructions. It's just like going to the bathroom." So, so how are we doing on the time and stuff like that? Because I am long-winded. You want to sit here for another 3 or 4 hours? How long have I been talking? A decent length of time? An hour? Oh, well, that's cool. All right, well, look, I'm going to let y'all go so you can have a good time and whatever comes next. And I love the Maryland Fellowship, and I'll put Boas NA Anywhere on my tag now. And because really I feel very much at home here. I could eat and sleep here, and, you know, maybe not make a family, but at least a home. And you know what I'm saying. And also, because I really have truly, bluely been around the block a hell of a lot, I have always heard good things about this part of the world, recovery and service-wise. But I know that it takes a lot of work. I've done newsletters. Every month we did a damn newsletter. It was just like the monthly miracle. We'd stay up to damn 5 or 6 in the morning. It was horrible. But we got the newsletter out. So sometimes when you're going through that kind of pain and agony for some good reason for Narcotics Anonymous, you're building your future. You're actualizing your humanity. An addict in active addiction cannot do that. You know, spiritual recovery is freedom from obsession and compulsion. Anyway, thank y'all for having me.